I left Jesus or Christianity and found peace. Hi, my name's Timmy Gibson, former fundamental evangelical, tongue talking, spirit filled, Holy Ghost rolling pastor. Did that for 30 years. 48 years I spent as a Christian. About 6 years ago, I deconstructed from my faith. Now I would consider myself agnostic, atheist as it relates to the Bible God. And appreciate you coming to my channel. Cuss and discuss below. As always, like, subscribe, share, do all that stuff. It really helps the channel, it helps the algorithm. Um, and, I think from the feedback I get a lot of emails, a lot of messages on how my videos, my perspectives, my talks are beneficial in your journey of deconstruction and walking away from your own faith. When you have your family and your friends, your circle of influence, who might all still be Christian, it's a tough road. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you and say that it's easy to walk away from it. I mean, ultimately, you should follow truth, which is what I did, which is what led me right out of Christianity. Is I longed for truth, and in my search for truth led me away. And that's what you hear from a lot of people who have a deconstruction story. They say, man, I feel more free now. I feel liberated. I feel more at peace. I feel more joy. I feel more. Now, in that deconstruction process, you might not be experiencing any of those things because you still have the voice of your family or your friends or your circle of influence who are, I don't want you to walk away from God, and I don't want you to go to hell. I literally had someone say this to me the other day. I said, man, I just want you to go to heaven so that when we die, we can spend eternity together. And I laugh. On one hand, I like, oh, I mean, it's sad that you believe that to be true. There's zero evidence for that. But I can only tell you my personal journey, my personal story. When I walked away, yes, initially it was very difficult. I have other videos that I've done where I talk about the challenge of leaving and how sad it was and how difficult it was and how I was heartbroken. It was very, very challenging. But now, 6 years out, man, I can't even tell you how wonderful it is to be free from those lies, from that delusion. And when I was a Christian, I would often say to people like me, now you're a ship without a rudder, you're a boat without oars. You're like, I had all these little quippy Christian things that people say to anyone not believing what you're believing. They're clearly lost. Their eternity is at stake. They could be losing their soul to the devil. That's just, I mean, they're tactics, though a Christian doesn't believe it's a tactic. They believe they're believing the truth, and they're just trying to help you not be deceived. The truth is they're deceived. The truth is the fundamental evangelical is deceived into believing that what they believe is actually true. I know this because I used to think that. And now being on the other side, it's like those that get, there's a name for it, and I can't think of the Stockholm syndrome, I think is what it's called. When someone is kidnapped and led to believe that, I'm your protector, I'm keeping you safe. If you go out there, it's dangerous, it's evil. And you see that with a lot of Christians. It's like, "Oh, I'd be scared to walk away from God. It's a bad world out there, and bad things can happen if you get out from underneath the protection of the Holy Spirit. Your life could be in danger." I still talk to Christians today that feel that way and believe that nonsense. They actually believe that people like me, my life is in jeopardy because I don't believe in their mythical imaginary friend anymore. And because I don't believe in their mythical magical friend that doesn't seem to be protecting them in any kind of way, and they still believe. And here I find my life more fulfilling, still purpose driven. I have more peace in my life. Things make sense now. because I'm not living in some kind of a fantasy evangelical Christian belief system of heaven and hell and the devil is, people go, well, it doesn't matter if you don't believe in the devil. That's the number one trick of the devil. He doesn't want you to believe in him. No, I'm not scared of the devil because he doesn't exist. I'm not scared of God. I don't believe God exists, right? I'm agnostic, atheist as it relates to the Bible God. And so most of the people that I interact with, they're of that Christian persuasion, and they're more that fundamental type, and they believe the things that I used to believe, all the same mythical, mystical, imaginary, fictional things that I believe, they still believe it. And so, it took me getting out of that to then look back and go, whoa, that's wild. It's a lot like that movie, The Village. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend it. I think it's available on some app. I've seen it available on streaming apps. If you haven't seen it, you got to watch it. It's that kind of a scenario. The people living in this village believed that the people outside of the village were evil. That is 100% how Christians are. Not all Christians, but the Christian group I came out of. We are God's chosen people. We are the special ones. We are the ones that are keeping the presence of God in this earth. Anything good, this is what I used to believe. Obviously, don't believe it anymore. But I believed that I was a keeper of this earth. I really believe that. When people talk about, I'm arrogant now, I'm prideful, I'm thinking, no, I was arrogant and prideful. Yeah, I'm sure I have arrogance in me. I'm sure I got pride in me, just like we all do. But, when I think about real arrogance and real pride, it's that. I believe that I was a keeper of this earth, that my prayers, my preaching at the time was what was keeping God's hand, not just on me, but on those that were in my church, those in my community that I was praying for, and the world that I was praying for. That if all I literally remember saying things like, if the the atheists would hate to see what the earth would be like if Christians stopped praying. Okay, look around. Just look around. There are crazy things going on in our world all the time. If all the Christians stopped praying, nothing would change except for the person isn't praying anymore. That's the only thing that would change. Like, it wouldn't be like all of a sudden the earth would just come unglued because their prayers are holding it all together. Because that's what I believed. Again, I know that you might be a Christian. You can always see the Christians below, the wingnut Christians, that you can just read their comments. They have no shame. They share their crazy belief right below in the comments. And I love that people cuss and discuss down there. I think it's fascinating, but it's also very telling. It's like, just when you think, how could someone believe that? Well, look at the comments on Timmy's videos. They clearly still believe it. They think it's true. And so, for me, that I, as a Christian, I really believe that I was a keeper of this earth. I was keeping, almost like I was standing in the gap, like God wanted to, sin is so ugly to God that he can't stand in the presence of sin. And it's my prayers and the sacrificial death of Jesus that keeps the wrath of God from just destroying this earth again, like he did in the days of Noah, when all of man's heart was evil and corrupt. And so God wiped out the earth and saved Noah and his wife and his three kiddos, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives, and then wiped out everybody else because God was just so mad and irritated and frustrated with man that he saved 8 people. Well, that's not true. That's a mythical story. There's no archaeological evidence for any of that. Now, were there floods? Well, of course. Like, that's duh. Like, that's true. There's still floods. There's still tsunamis. There's still fires and calamities and earthquakes and hurricanes, and like all that stuff is still going on. but God will never flood the entire earth because look at we have rainbows. I used to believe, I used to believe that every time I'd see a rainbow, I'd like take a picture. See, it's God's promise that He'll never flood the earth again. I'll tell that to people that live in places that have flooded and they've lost everything. God was like, well, okay, I'll allow some floods, just not one, not a global flood for the whole earth. Isn't there evidence? I don't think there's, or there isn't, there's no evidence for a global flood. There's regional floods, there's floods, but there's no global where the entire globe was underwater and the tallest mountain was underwater. I don't think there's any evidence for that, especially not for those Christians that believe all that stuff to be true within the last 6,000 years. I mean, that's just that absolutely definitely didn't happen. There would be evidence of that. There is zero evidence for that. I know you can watch some Christian archaeological ridiculousness, and they're not real archaeological. They're not real scientists. They're not really whatever. I'm not scientific. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not somebody that can. There's other channels who do a great job getting into the real science of it. I'm not that knowledgeable. I'm just a former preacher who's now been saved by rational thinking and has lost my salvation to the truth of what is real. And I no longer believe the mythical hooky pooky from the Bible. Now I lost my train of thought. Oh, I left Jesus. Now I found peace. It's just true. Like um, yeah, it's just true. I have more peace in my heart, and more. I think, and probably just if I'm like looking inward and saying why, how is that true? Like for me, I think, well, discovering truth, it does set you free. When you're, here's the thing that I do know about Christians, because again, I was one. I was a pastor, so I did a lot of biblical guidance counseling. So I met with a lot of troubled, questioning, disheartened, delusional Christians who would come into my office and tell me how they're struggling, and why is God allowing my child to be sick, and why does my child have cancer, or why did God have to take my sibling, or why did this have to happen, and why. There's so much confusion in there, and I struggled myself with all the same confusing things, because it was like I believed God answered prayer, yet the evidence was completely to the contrary. Like clearly God doesn't answer prayer. There is no God to be answering prayer. So, and you prayed 10 times, one time it actually happened, and you're like, see, God answers prayer. He healed my toenail. Like, I mean, I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, I used to do that same thing. I'd pray for this, it didn't happen. I'd pray for this, it didn't happen. I'd pray this person to get healed, they didn't get healed. I'd pray for this, whatever, save this, do this, yada yada. And then the one time it did, that's the sermon that I preached on Sunday. We prayed for so and so that their cancer would be healed, and God healed them. Well, the whole story is they went through 6 months of chemotherapy, 3 months of radiation, and then they had the lumps removed by a surgeon. That's what healed them, not the hocus pocus. Like, because does God have to use a surgeon? No. Like, God can do anything, right? No, he can't. There is no God. He can't do jack crap. He ain't doing jack crap for nobody. But you can make believe like he is. I prayed for that job and I got that job. Right? I mean, we've all hoped for jobs and applied for jobs, and sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. It depends on whether you're qualified or you have a good track record, you have good references. I mean, it's who you know. And I mean, there's so many different factors. It has nothing to do with God. It has everything to do with your ability to do whatever it is. That's, that it's a very natural process. I think for me, leaving Jesus and finding peace, I think it's just because I started, all of a sudden now things make sense. Things make sense to me now because I understand evolution. I understand just how the world works. And I understand that, yeah, I need to study and prepare myself for something, not just pray that God will bring it to me. Like I need to apply my skills and my talents and my wisdom, my whatever, to be able to accomplish things, right? And so, you know, for me, I think it was just everything in my life. All of a sudden, it became, I could understand it. Now, I will need to say something here because I remember as a Christian, I remember I got to a place in my life that I would have said it made sense to me. But it wasn't because I was being intellectually honest. I think I had just gotten to a place in my heart where I took one of the teachings that Christians believe in, which is faith. Faith is the most important thing. You know, without faith, it's impossible to please God, the Bible says, which is fascinating, right? To believe something with zero evidence for it, and in fact, even evidence to the contrary. But I'm still going to hold on to believing it. That's why often we would say um, things like, you know, the Bible says it, I believe it, and that settles it. That's where that comes from. Or we would say, I would say this, I would say, no matter what, I believe the greater truth of God's word. I'd say that. Or I'd say, my trust is in God and he knows everything and I don't know everything and don't need to know everything because I believe in the God who does know everything. He holds the world in the palm of his hands. Like it's you know, it's like knowing a famous person, you know, which just FYI, I don't think I've ever mentioned this on my channel though, but it is a fun little trivia. My one of my high school buddies is super famous. I went to high school with Paul Rudd, Ant Man. Maybe I did mention that one time in an earlier video. But anyway, yeah, Paul Rudd was a friend of mine. He lived down the street from me growing up through high school, and we were friends in high school. And in fact, my high school sweetheart, like the girl I went to prom with, not to my school, she went to um, Shawnee Mission Northwest. I'm not going to mention her name, but so my high school sweetheart is now married to a Backstreet Boy. That's like literally, she's still married to him. They have kids and everything. They seem to be doing really, really well. But she was like my high school girlfriend for a year. Went to prom together. We went on senior trip to the Bahamas together, and she's now married to a Backstreet Boy. Anyway, so you know, it's like that. It's wanting to associate with someone like that. Like I knew Paul Rudd. That makes me cool too, right? You know, it's that kind of a thing, right? So it was almost like that. Like I don't need to know. God knows. And since I think I know this imaginary God person and he knows everything, I don't need to know everything because my buddy, my imaginary friend knows everything. So it's kind of like I quasi know everything by faith. You know what I mean? Like I'm associating myself with God, therefore I don't have to explain it. Because I'd have people ask me, how could a good God send good, kind, caring people to hell just because they don't believe in Jesus? And I remember when I would get that question, I remember in my own mind thinking, yeah, I don't know if I agree with that either, and I think that sounds pretty wackadoodle, and that doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But what I would never say that out loud. I was thinking all those thoughts, but what I would say out loud is, you know what? God's ways are above my ways. God understands, and God is just, and if He says it's good, it's good. If He says it's bad, it's bad. If God says it's right, it's right. That's how God of the Old Testament specifically could, you know, wipe out people and be guilty of genocide. You know, God could kill people, but God was just, right? If God did something that all of us would be, you know, put in prison for life, if God did it though, I mean, He's God, so He must have His reasons, and it must be right. Because if God is doing it, who am I to question God? That is such a stupid statement. I used to say it. Who am I to question God? Here's another little quippy thing I'd say. I'd say that's above my pay grade. In other words, Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me, but I'm not God. But it makes sense to God, apparently, because he did it. He wiped everybody out. He must have had a good reason. And therefore, what God does, even when it's technically evil and criminal and murderous, it's good. It's just. It's right. And I don't have to understand it. God does. And that's all that matters. Those things are just stupid things to say. That's just stupid things preachers say, including what I used to say. It's just stupidness. So now that I don't believe those stupid things that are fictional, fairy tale, folklore, lies, delusions, now that I don't have to deal with all of that and can see it for what it is, I have peace in my heart. Because now, which no one asked me this now because I don't believe in heaven or hell. How could an all caring, all loving, all kind, good, benevolent God, whatever, send a good, kind, caring person to hell? Well, he doesn't, because there is no hell, there is no God. Now, and I want to do a separate video on this, but I heard this just recently. Someone said, "Well, that's just it. You're wrong in your theology in the question. God don't send people to hell. People choose hell." Oh, okay. I'm choosing hell over heaven. No, that is just, again, that is just a stupid little thing. It's like that thing from The Count of Monte Cristo. I think that Dante, if you haven't seen the movie, just watch it. It's a great movie. There's a scene in the movie where he was put in prison forever and he was innocent. And so obviously he was an innocent, good person thrown in prison, falsely accused. It was all lies. And, he spent way too many years in this prison being beaten and all the stuff. And he met this old sage, and this guy, and the guy, Dante, I think is his name. He said, which is Jim Caviezel, and he's a wingnut in real life. Goodness gracious, or at least it sure seems like he is. Have you ever read anything on Jim Caviezel? Anyway, I think that Passion of the Christ went to his head. And Mel Gibson. What's up? Anyway, so he says to this old sage, "I don't believe in God," because he said God will redeem you, or God will justify, or God will make it right, or vengeance belongeth to God, or something of that sort. And Jim Caviezel's character said, "I don't believe in God," and this old sage says, "Well, that's okay because God believes in you." It's like, oh, back when I was a Christian, that just touched my heart. I was like, oh, that's such a beautiful sentiment that, people that don't believe in God, that's okay because God still loves them and believes in them. So ridiculous. What? Yeah. And if you don't love him, he's going to send you to hell forever to burn, forever and ever and ever and ever. A little finite sin, you lived 60, 70, 80, 100 years on this world, didn't know Jesus, didn't accept Jesus, didn't believe in Jesus. You're a good person. And then you're going to die and spend eternity being punished for some little mysterious God that apparently is hiding from everybody, doesn't reveal himself at all, really. When people say, "I've seen God, I've talked to God," just mark it down. That person's insane. They're clinically insane. They haven't met with Jesus. They've not seen Jesus. They've not talked to actually Jesus or actually God. They haven't been given some kind of wisdom from on high. They don't know any kind of secrets. Anytime someone says that kind of stuff, mark it down. They are insane. Now, people can be smart and can be intuitive, and by intuitive I mean just be intellectually, emotionally intelligent, and you know what I mean. Like I remember when I was a Christian, and even now I've met people and I say, "Listen, I know you're going through a rough time in your life, and this and that, da 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 da." I'm not. It's not because I'm a prophet. It's not because I'm seeing into the future or I'm seeing into their soul. I can just read people. I can talk to people and kind of get a sense of things. And people, and as a pastor, that's all that I realize that's just what I was was working from, was a place of, I understand to a degree, very minutely, like I understand people, and I know that people are hurting. I know they're going through a rough time, and I know they have questions and doubts, and they're struggling, and they're confused. And I mean, I know that about people, and I can tell when people are going through that just because I can watch people's body language and how they talk and all that. And you know what I mean? Like, so it's not like I'm genuinely reading people's mail. So many times I've had people think that of me, man, you're reading my mail, man. That sermon was like literally like God sent you an email all about me. It's like, no, it's just human nature. It's not magical. They're not really seeing into the future or into the past or in talking to fellow relatives that have gone on before. Like, I don't believe in any of that stuff. Now, I know some people do, and that's fine. You do you. I just don't believe in that. And there's just no proof or evidence for that. It's all usually in real general terms, and that's all been proven fake and fraudulent and BS anyway. The only time that I think that stuff is fun or helpful, I went to a Renaissance festival, and at the Renaissance festival, there was a tarot reader there, and I think tarot's fun. I think and especially if the person is doesn't want to say, you have calamity coming your way, but like if they're just like, you're contemplating this in your life and you're trying to decide which way to go, and you have big decisions up ahead of you, and when you've had that recent loss in your life, which we all have loss in our life, right? So you could have had a dog die, you could have had a family member die, a friend die, or well, like all different things can happen. Well, that's what then you touch onto that, right? Because we've all had loss. So if I get to talking about you've had recent loss in your life, whatever loss that you've had, you grab onto that and think, wow, he's reading my mail. No, everybody's experienced loss. Everybody's experienced transition. Everybody has, that are trying to weigh your life, trying to figure out what's what. Like, that's just common amongst humans. If I wanted to be fraudulent, I could get a crystal ball and have people sit down and get into a conversation with them, and and start doing that, and but I don't believe in that. So for me to do that, that would be fraudulent. Some people do it sincerely, and they sincerely believe that they have some kind of a talent or a gift or whatever, and that's fine. Listen, no judgment, no shame. That I'm not into that, but I know some good people are, and whatever. I don't speak to that because people can believe whatever they want to believe. Mainly what I talk about on my channel are people that are fundamental, meaning what I believe, you must believe in order to have eternal security with God. That's the message that I, as you know, come and get, custom discuss below, share, like, share, getting my words mixed up, like, share, all the stuff. That's what I'm addressing here on my page or on my show, is that fundamental evangelical, I believe the truth, I believe stupid stuff, and you must believe the same stupid stuff, as well as the imaginary friend that I have, you must have, and you have to believe it just like I believe it, in order to be secure in your soul and going to heaven. Because you don't want to go to hell, do you? You don't want to be in hell burning forever and ever. You don't want to find out in hell that you is wrong. That stuff's just stupid. So yeah, bottom line, I leaving Jesus led me to find peace and joy and contentment, and a much more beautiful life. Uh, Really, and not I have bad things happen. I get headaches, or I get frustrated. I get my car gets flat tire. I mean, all the same. My life's just like everybody else's life. It's just like everybody else's life. And I've said this in other videos. If you want your life to go better, make better decisions, right? If you want a better love life, if you're single, date better quality people. I mean, right? That's easy. Just like, if you want things to be better in your life, then you have to better yourself in order to have a better experience. And it still doesn't guarantee that everything's going to be magically better. Just like believing in God ain't going to help jack crap. Praying ain't going to help jack crap. Like, that ain't going to do anything for you. Now, it might give you some sense of, I prayed today, and it gives me a sense of euphoria. It makes me feel good, like I've done something. I used to feel that way. People will say, I'm sure they've already said it in the comments below, well, Timmy must not have really known the real God or the real Jesus, or didn't have a real relationship with Jesus. Again, those people, they're just morons, okay? People that say that are morons because A, they don't know me. Two, I can tell you straight from the horse's mouth, I did believe it. And I had a real relationship with a real fake imaginary friend that I now realize was just my own self, my own mind. Because I still, to this day, will get guidance from myself. Like I'll think about things, I'll ponder things, I'll journal about things, I'll I'll debate things, I'll have conversations, and I'll get clarity about something, a feeling of this is the way I should go. I get it all the time with this, with my show here on YouTube, right here, this show. I have a journal. I'll show it to you. I have a journal with ideas. All this is just ideas. I mean, ideas on things to talk about on my channel. And I will say this. Now, the Christian was like, well, God ain't giving you those ideas, Timmy. The devil is. Okay, here, I'm going to just put that to a test. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to close my eyes. So I'm going to get the right pen for this. I'm going to close my eyes and just write something randomly. Just randomly. Are you ready? Okay. I'm going to write something randomly. Was it God? Ah! It was 666. It's the devil. The devil's got control of my pen. Ah! Now the devil, all those ideas is coming from the devil. And I can say this because I know that's what Christians think. That's what I would have thought about someone like me. That I went from being led by God, and then when I left God, the imaginary friend, now I was believing and following the devil, and the devil is the Lord of this world, and he's giving Timmy wisdom. He's trying to get Timmy to say things that will lead people away from their faith. Okay, first, let me just say this. Number one, that ain't happening, right? I'm not preaching atheism in a way to get a Christian to walk away from their faith. That just doesn't happen. That just doesn't happen. People are already on their own questioning and having doubts and suspicions, as they should. Excuse me, because they're using their brain now, unfiltered. Little gnat. They're not allowing they're removing that Christian filter and going, oh, I think maybe what I've been believing isn't true. And that brings more and more clarity. So, despite what some Christian's going to say below, that I'm now working for the devil, that's just not true. I mean, in their mind, it is true. Again, I used to say the same thing, and I thought I was right 100%, that I was correct in my perspective of anyone not believing in the God that I believed in the religion that I believed in the Bible, the ancient, mystical book that I believed in. Then they were just delusional. They were misled. And so, yeah, Christians obviously, I mean, that's what they have to say. A Christian thinks that I have been deceived. And I know this because I have talked to my Christian friends. Plus, I know what I used to think about people like me. But I've talked to my Christian friends, and they've said, yeah, because I've said, you think I've been deceived. You think I've been blinded by the devil. And they said, yeah, I do. And I'm like, well, that's fair. I mean, I believe that you're still delusional and believing in a myth. So, I mean, here we are, right? So let's go have a cigar and a beer. Let's not talk about religion. Let's talk about being a father. Let's talk about being a husband or a wife, or let's talk about careers, or let's talk about all the millions of other things we could talk about and not talk about So yeah, leaving Jesus, leaving Christianity was 100% just the best thing I could have ever done for my life. I couldn't be happier. I couldn't be more at peace. I couldn't be more settled. You know, all the things that I could not understand that within the Christian context I couldn't make sense of. Well, all that's gone away. Like all that's gone away. It's just gone away. I don't have any anxiety over hell. I don't believe in hell. And if by some chance there is something after this, and I'm going to stand before this righteous God, I just don't know how else to tell you this, except I just don't have a fear, even if that is true. I just don't. I, I, I just can only tell you what I really feel inside. If I was to die today and all of a sudden, because the Bible says to be absent from the, to be absent, what does it say? Something about to die is to be absent from the, to be absent from from the body is to be present with the Lord. Okay, I used to believe that to be true. So let's just say that is true. And I died. Bam, I'm standing before God. Well, hot diggity dog. It is true. Why did you hide? Why did you, make the earth old? Why did you hide dinosaur bones that weren't real? Like, why would you have, like, I mean, I'd have so many questions, right? But I mean, you know, clearly at that point, if I died and I'm standing before God, well, then it's like, well, yeah, okay, I guess it was true. But which version of you is true? The Hindu version, the Jewish version, the Christian version? Which one of the Christian versions? Like, which one of the 39,000 denomination perspectives were you? Are you the Muslim God? Are you the Jain God? Or what? Like, which one are you? Explain to me which one you were, because it was very confusing. Because because it's not true. It's why is it confusing? Because man made it up. That's clear. That's so clear that religion is man-made. Yeah, all of them. All religions are man-made. All spiritual insight is all man-made. That's why there are so many different mystics, so many different mystical believing trails. Some believe in the Anunnaki, some believe in this, and some believe in reincarnation, and some believe that there's a hell, some believe that this, some believe that like everybody believes something. It all can be true. What's the most rational thing? None of them are true. We don't know. And I find that to bring me so much peace to finally recognize, oh, so that's what's up. It was like, I'm going to end with this. It was like I have a little Pomeranian. I've shown it on, he's in my picture. She is in my pictures. I have a beautiful little 16-year-old Pomeranian. She's a big fluff ball. She weighs like 3-4 pounds, but she's just all hair. Well, we have a cat too. And so there was this mystery happening. Our cat was never using the litter box. In fact, she was never going to the bath, never going poop. And we're like, what's going on? What's happening? Why is she not going poop? What's wrong with her? Do we need to take her to the vet? Finally, we found out because we caught the little Pomeranian, my little dog Elle, was sneaking into where the kitty litter box was, and she was eating up the little tasty poop treats that the cat was leaving. Well, when we realized that's what's happening, it was like, oh, everything's okay with the cat. She is going poop. It's just our dog is eating it. Little tasty chocolate treats. Well, also the evidence was in Elle is the dog's name. Her poop had litter in it. Go figure, right? Clear evidence that we know what's going on now. That's what it was like. What a wild analogy. It just came to my mind. That's what made sense to all this for me. It's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, well, why isn't Christianity true? Well, because none of them are true. That's how we know this. All right, guys, cuss and discuss below, like, share, do all the stuff. Peace.